Hello everybody, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about force feedback on Logitech wheels specifically, not just in Assetto Corsa, but for all the games. So let's start off with what do these effects even mean and what will they do to your wheel. So the first thing that we want to look at is the overall effect, strength, and the gain in your game. Personally myself, I will normally run 100% on the wheel, so I know the wheel software at least recognizes 100%, and I will probably get, assuming, a more dynamic range for what this wheel has to offer than if I left it down at 50%. This is also going to be your overall strength of the feedback, which will make your wheels shake, rattle, harder to turn a little bit, etc. Along with that, in most games, you'll also have a gain percentage. That's going to be the same thing, except it's going to be on the game's end. Now, depending on the game that you're playing, how they coded the gain will be different. The gain will not always be the same in the video game that you're playing, but the overall effect strength in the software itself is always the same. It will always do the same thing. So let's move on to invert FFB. What does this mean and when do we use it? Invert FFB is a tool that you use when you go to drift your car or steer your car, and it's hard to steer away from the direction that you were going. So for example, if you're making a right turn, your wheel may lock or try to lock turning right, and you'll have a hard time getting the wheel back straight. If that's happening to you, you hit invert FFB and it will fix it. It's similar to inverting your controller when flying a plane, whether you want down is up or up is down or up is up and down is down. That's the same exact thing here. So now we'll move on to the minimum force percentage, which is going to be the minimum amount of force that is going to come through your wheel at any given time, and I like to leave that at 1%. I don't want my wheel to have a minimum force of 10%, just in case I'm lightly hitting a curb or a wall. I don't want it to give me more feedback than what's needed, so I leave the minimum force at 1%. So now we get into some of the effects here. And one thing that I would like to talk about right away is the damper effect in the Logitech software itself. We're going to skip spring and leave that at 0, but the damper effect is going to be the resistance in your wheel. So for example, if you're playing a game like BeamNG and you have 42-inch tires on the car and you go to turn your wheel, it's going to resist way more. Those tires and wheels are way heavier, so that would be your dampening. If you want the wheel to be harder just to turn, then you increase the dampening. If you want your wheel to be easier to spin around, then you lower the dampening. Now let's talk about curb effect, road effect, slip effect, and ABS effect on our Logitech wheels. The curb effect is going to provide you with a clunk every time you hit a curb. It's basically trying to simulate the big bang of hitting your wheels on a curb or passing on a track curb, sidewalk curb. Any sort of curb effect that you might get from hitting a small little bump is now going to come through the wheel. Personally myself, there's already feedback for this happening. You don't need the extra effects. Again, it's another one of those things where if I'm driving the car, I don't need to be fighting my wheel for control over a bump. I would rather just try to hold that wheel straight, just like in real life. My wheel isn't trying to turn over a little bump in the road or a jump. I'm just trying to go straight through it. Now the road effect is another one that I leave off, because depending on the road that you're driving, especially if you have curb effect on as well. For example, you're driving on a mountain road and you have a Logitech wheel with road effect on. Every little bump in the road or road texture is now going to also add on to the feedback through the wheel. Again, the more settings you have enabled like this that are providing extra feedback that isn't necessary, it's going to make it harder to drive efficiently. The slip effect, I personally also have off, because what that does is vibrates the wheel ever so gently when you start to slip out on the car. Now, if I already have my force feedback up and my dampening up and I have enough gain on and there's enough settings here for this Logitech wheel to recognize that, you can use it. It's a personal preference for the slip effect. That one, it really doesn't matter. If you like the feeling of a little kind of vibration in your wheel going back and forth when you slide, have it on. If you have that happening and you don't like that feeling, take it off. It's that simple. The ABS effect, always 0%, okay? On a Logitech wheel, this needs to be at 0%. And if you are driving a car on a Logitech wheel, in the pit menu before you drive it, always check to see if there's ABS and how the car stops without ABS. If the car stops okay without ABS, then don't use it on the Logitech. If the car does stop with ABS, but it doesn't shake your wheel, use ABS. If you go to hit the brakes and the wheel is shaking your car profusely, even with the ABS off, then don't use that car. It's as simple as that. No car should shake the wheel like an AK when you're hitting the brakes. If it does, switch out of that car and move on. Skip FFB steps, soft lock, and enhance understeer effect. Keep this off, and skip FFB steps. I would just leave personally at 2. I find that one is usually the best. And hardware lock, we're going to go ahead and keep that off. Experimental options, keep that off. Gyroscopic effect, keep that off. Low speed threshold, this just means that if you get to 3 kilometers an hour, your feedback will now be normal. If below 3, you have what's called a lower speed FFB reduction, and basically what's going to happen is under 3 kilometers, your feedback will be reduced, so in parking lots you don't have bad feedback issues and rumbling and vibrating. At the same time, the low speed FFB strength, we want to go ahead and keep that at 1%, because if we're just cruising and we're doing 5 miles an hour and we hit a wall, we don't need our wheel to vibrate and shake profusely, alright? So, now the other thing going on here is the filter percentage, alright? So the filter percentage is really important. This will provide a smoothing effect in your wheel at the cost of less accurate force feedback readings. So what I mean by this is if you have a 25% filter on your wheel, which is what I'm running, and let's say I'm racing on a racetrack, and I hit the curb, going around a corner to get over, I'm going to feel that no problem. Everything there is going to be good. I'll feel most of that, and everything will be fine. What I'm not going to feel is every little tiny road bump in the road. My force feedback isn't going to be wiggling my wheel or anything, because a filter of 25% will remove enough roughness and jaggedness from the Logitech wheel, but still give me enough smooth feedback to race the game efficiently with the wheel. So those are some of the really big things that you guys need to do. If you're hitting a wall and your wheel is just sounding like it's going to destroy itself, please come into here and turn up the filter. It will make a big difference, and it will really fix how your wheel is shaking really badly. Please do that. Please add a filter to the Logitech wheels. There are cars in this game that you will drive that will break this wheel. It will break your wheel if you just go and drive it how it is. So be careful and make sure you don't have any hardware lock options on. None of this stuff. Your wheel will break. I swear, it's not. If it doesn't break right away, it will break soon. Don't use any of that stuff. And the last thing on our list today is to talk about the steering rotation of the car and what degrees of rotation you should use. Now, if you look up online, if you're a sim racer and you want the proper rotation for the cars, you can simply go on the web, you can look that up, and you can find that information. But more importantly, I feel most people watching this are probably going to be driving on LA canyons or cutting up in traffic. And for these guys, I highly recommend that you lower the steering degree of rotation from 900 just a bit. You know, you want to have your precision that you have with the 900 steering, but also you have to take into consideration parts are changeable in real life. If you want to have a car that has less of a steering degree angle, it doesn't mean it's not realistic. You would just have to change a set of components on your car and give yourself that less of a steering angle. The same thing if you want a bigger wheel or a smaller wheel, if you want more precision or less. If you want to do rally racing or drifting, you're going to use different wheels in real life, different size wheels. There's different wheels for everything. There's different steering kits, there's different steering angles, there's different cambers on all these cars. All these cars will feel a little different in real life. However, the steering degree rotation is something that you should consider the most important thing, because that's going to be how you drive the car. And if you drive better at 600 than 900, or 450 than 900, or 400 than 1080, or if you drive F1 cars on 180 instead of 270, it does not matter. It's a video game, and what you need to do, just like any other sport, any other thing that you would have passion for, is first thing is you need to try to set up your equipment correctly so it's comfortable, which I've shown you how to do, and then you need to be able to drive it and use it efficiently. And I'm sorry to say this, but no matter how realistic everybody wants to say keeping your wheel at 900 degrees is, it's not realistic, because every car is made different. Some cars aren't even modded with a full 900 degree steering rotation. You'll see that car stop steering on the interior before you even get there. So if you're really trying to make the game immersive and realistic, you need it to feel how it's going to feel for you driving a car in real life. And for me, I'll tell you one thing right now. If I'm doing 200 down the highway and I barely move my wheel to the left or right, that car is going to want to send into the wall. And you want to know why? It has to do with something called speed sensitivity. The faster you are driving your vehicle, the less it takes to engage steering to get the car to steer somewhere. Now that's obviously not for high speeds, but if you're switching a lane on the highway, you can do that with your fingertip at 200, and the car will do it. It will do it quickly. If you are going 200 in real life and you're 900 in the game, and you turn the car in real life as much as you would in the game, you're literally going to nosedive into the wall and flip your car and crash it. And that's why I say, don't worry about your wheel degree rotation. Don't let someone tell you 500's wrong, 600 wrong, 700 wrong, 800 wrong, 900 good. Because it's not true. Everybody's different. Everybody's got different eyes. Everybody's got different strength. Everybody has different drivability. And if you're anything like me, you'll play on a lower degree for a faster response time, rather than having a total accurate thing of where the car's going. Because you know what? After a while, just like anything else, you get used to a smaller hockey stick, you get used to a bigger or smaller bike, you get used to a bigger or smaller baseball bat. If you know how to drive, you know how to drive. If you can play a sport, you can play a sport. The equipment matters, being comfortable matters, and that's what you got to get done today. Have a good day, everybody. Stay gaming.